All right, welcome. Today, we're going to fire up the boiler and talk about one of the most important inventions in, well, all of human history, the steam engine. We're going to see how this pretty simple force of nature completely, and I mean completely, reshaped our world. You know, when you boil it down, that's all it is. Hot water, pressurized water vapor. But this incredible force, once we figured out how to capture it and control it, well, it lit the fuse of the Industrial Revolution and basically kicked the door open to the modern age. So what are we actually talking about here? At its most basic, a steam engine is just a device that turns heat into motion. It uses the incredible expansion of water when it turns into steam to push a piston. And that simple push, that's the foundation for literally everything that comes next. Now, you have to understand, great inventions like this don't just pop up out of thin air. Nope, they're almost always a solution to a really, really big problem. And back in the 18th century, that problem was water. Lots and lots of water. See, the Industrial Revolution was hungry for coal, but the deeper the miners dug, the more the mines flooded with groundwater. They were literally drowning in the one resource they needed most, so they desperately needed a powerful, reliable way to pump all that water out. The first attempts were, clever, but also kind of flawed. In 1698, you had Thomas Savery's pump, which used steam to create a vacuum. It sort of worked, but they had this nasty habit of exploding. Not great. Then, in 1712, Thomas Newcomen built the first truly successful engine. This thing could provide continuous power, and for the mines, it was a total game changer. But, and this is a huge but, here's the catch. Newcomen's engine was a total coal guzzler. I mean, it worked, for sure, but it burned through a mountain of fuel just to do its job. It was a brute force solution, and the world really needed something smarter. And that brings us to the main character of our story, the Scottish inventor James Watt. Now, he didn't invent the steam engine, but his incredible insight into that one massive flaw would unlock its true potential. You see, Watt figured out the core problem. The Newcomen engine wasted a ton of energy because it used the same cylinder for everything. It would fill with hot steam, push the piston, and then they'd spray it with cold water to condense the steam back down. It was like trying to boil a kettle that you keep sticking in the fridge over and over. Just a massive waste of heat. Watt's solution was an absolute stroke of genius. He came up with the separate condenser. It's that second vessel you see here. The steam would do its work in the main cylinder and then travel over to the separate, cold container to be condensed. This meant the main cylinder could stay piping hot all the time, ready for the next shot of steam. This comparison really lays it all out. Newcomen's engine was constantly fighting itself, heating up and cooling down. Watt's engine, though, was all about efficiency. It kept the main cylinder hot, always. It seems like such a simple change, doesn't it? But trust me, it was absolutely revolutionary. And the results? They were just staggering. Watt's engines immediately used half as much coal. They were twice as efficient. And this wasn't just about saving a few bucks on fuel. This was the key that finally unlocked the steam engine from the coal mines and let it go out and power factories, mills, and, well, the entire Industrial Revolution. Okay, so with efficiency finally solved, the next big challenge was to break the engine free from the factory floor. The revolution needed to get moving. It needed to get on the road. Or maybe more accurately, on the rails. The thing about Watt's engines is that they used low-pressure steam, which meant they had to be absolutely massive to generate any real power. To make them smaller and more powerful, small enough to actually move themselves, engineers had to find a way to pack more punch into every puff of steam. The answer? High-pressure steam. And once Watt's patent expired in 1800, the floodgates just flew open. Suddenly, you had all these new innovators. Richard Trevithick builds the first high-pressure engine, and then in 1804, he puts it on wheels for the world's very first railway journey. Just a few years later, by 1829, George Stephenson's rocket proves to the world that steam trains weren't just possible, they were the future. And the steam locomotive did so much more than just move stuff around. It connected cities, it created entire national markets, it moved people and ideas faster than ever before. It really became the thundering, smoking symbol of a brand new industrial age. So, for the next century or so, the steam engine was king. Engineers just spent decades refining it, perfecting it, squeezing every last drop of efficiency and power they could from the basic design.
And the versatility of this thing was just astonishing. I mean, look at this. In factories, you had these absolute behemoths like the coreless engine, which were these beautiful models of quiet efficiency. At sea, you had engines getting more and more complex to power massive ocean liners. Even on the farm, steam tractors were revolutionizing agriculture. It was truly everywhere. This animation shows the next big leap. Instead of just using the steam once and throwing it away, clever engineers designed engines that would recycle it. High-pressure steam pushes the first piston, and then the exhaust from that, which still has plenty of energy, is sent over to push a second, larger piston, and then a third. It was the ultimate in power recycling, getting every bit of work out of every puff of steam. But, no king reigns forever. The age of the classic chugging piston steam engine did eventually come to an end. But its story doesn't stop there. It left behind a powerful ghost that is, in a lot of ways, still with us today. For things like cars and planes, the internal combustion engine was just lighter, faster, and way more convenient. And for generating electricity, a whole new kind of steam power was starting to take over. The old back-and-forth piston had finally met its match. So what's the difference? Well, the old engine was all about pushing a piston back and forth. The new steam turbine is all about spinning. It uses a high-pressure jet of steam to spin a rotor directly, kind of like a really, really high-tech pinwheel. And for generating massive amounts of electricity, this is way more efficient. So with the locomotives all in museums and the old factories silent, it's pretty easy to think that the age of steam is just a closed chapter in a history book, right? But let me ask you a question. When you flip a light switch at home, what do you think is actually generating that power on the other end? The answer is steam. That's right. Whether the heat is coming from coal, natural gas, or even a nuclear reactor, about 90% of electricity in the United States is generated by boiling water to spin a steam turbine. So the next time you turn on the lights, just remember, the powerful ghost of the steam engine is still out there, working silently to power your world.